I would like to bring to the stage and ask you to assist me in bringing to the stage one of my dear friends. As I don't want to say his name just yet, he'll be speaking on Bitcoin architecture for African enterprises, from monetary fragility to treasury grade operating infrastructure. Please help me welcome to the stage none other than Sooly Kobayashi.
Good morning, good morning. So apparently you can order a triple Americano in Kenya. And yeah, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Oken, this morning. So due to the triple Americano, I might finish earlier than the time. Oh, it's working. Oh, cool. Okay. If I do, I might take questions at the end, please. So, all right. Good morning again. So before we start, if you want the presentation, you just need to go to my website, NeoWealth.xyz. There's a WhatsApp icon. Click on it, drop me a message. I'll send you the presentation. Anything else you need. So I'm gonna try to pace myself down. I did some breathing exercises before starting as well, so let's see if it works. Now, the keynote today is a framework for business owners, high net worth individuals, enterprise leaders, but also it's been tailored for you if you want to convince your employer or your board with Bitcoin. And before convincing anyone, is anticipating how they think first. I'm not here to sell Bitcoin. I'm here to explain why Bitcoin. Okay. A bit about me. Some know me, some don't. It's my second time in Nairobi. Really happy to be here. Thank you guys for having me. So I started as a shitcoiner. No one said shitcoin on stage before, about 10 years ago. And then about 2020, Corona, I started helping Bitcoin-only companies work in the Middle East and Africa, expanding, strategize about the region, just because I've been visiting the region every 6 weeks for 3 weeks for the past 11 years. I'm Lebanese, born and raised. I don't know if you know, but in 2019, every single Lebanese citizen lost access to their bank account. Actually, you do have access to your bank account, but you can't use it, especially if it's foreign currency. So if you had $100 or $1 million, you couldn't transfer that. So my moms, my brothers, my grandma, neighbors, friends, it's still mass trauma that people just stopped talking about. I don't know if it was luck, but I had everything Bitcoin then. But then in 2019, I was still a trader, shitcoiner. I didn't get it. I was like, okay, what just happened? It felt really wrong to be in a better position than the closest to my heart. And then, yeah, the unfortunate corona or COVID, made me go through go through the rabbit hole that we all been through. And yeah, got a job. It was a consulting job to help Bitcoin-only companies start to work in Africa, Middle East. After the first job, first company, and it was in parallel with my fiat mining. I was like, okay, I did this without going to a university to study Bitcoin. That means let me try to do it again. So I did it again, and then I started my own company, NeoWealth. NeoWealth started as helping Bitcoin-only companies expand in the region. I still do that. I still help Bitcoin startups to do that as well. But I started onboarding fiat traditional companies onto Bitcoin. It's through treasury, payment, mining, anything Bitcoin related. And along the way, since I think it's my second year, I've been supporting Gen3 as the advisor for the region. So if Kenya or any other country is working for like pitching Bitcoin for central banks or governments, please reach out. I would help. I would love to help. All right. Okay, before starting, how many business owners are there in the room? Can you raise your hands, please? Okay. How many non-Bitcoin companies, business owners are there in the room? Okay, cool. All right. So now, every single company, regardless of what you do, Bitcoin or not, you need to pay suppliers, you need to pay staff, bonuses. You need to hold, and you need to think as a business owner. I'm not talking as a Bitcoiner here. Okay, you need to think of how can you optimize your business organization, right? Your balance sheet, your P&L. You need to hold some reserves. For example, it would be ideal if you have a property, okay, as an asset. You need to hold, I mean, in a traditional word, big companies would hold bonds, properties. Why would you need that? You would need that to liquidate in case you need to. You want it to appreciate in value over time because we know the problems of money. And then you need to move value to whom? To the owners, shareholders in different forms. And then if you want to really be efficient, you need to have controls in place. You need to prove that you have controls. Prove to whom? You need to prove to the shareholders, to the investors, and so on. So the first function you need to take into consideration when walking to a board is the CFO or the financial decision maker. And by that, you have, I would say, 4 questions. And that applies everywhere. Can you access hard currency while making sure that you give your suppliers the certainty they want? Second, can you settle payments cross borders without the risk of delays? How is that taken into consideration in your pricing and your cost controls? Third, how can you make sure that you preserve the purchasing power, regardless where you are in Africa, without creating an audit, custody, or legal risks? Now, I know that Bitcoiners can be cowboys sometimes, and if you are in Africa, Africa is quite interesting in a sense where the market is really growing really fast. Demographics are super interesting. Every business, the turnover, financial turnover of companies in Africa is higher, quicker than any other continent. And I'm talking from experience in the past 11 years working across the industry. Um, Boards in general, management, leadership of every company is not prepared for a crisis. They are not proactive. Okay. So whenever you think of a Bitcoin strategy, you need to make sure that the board is in advance ready to explain what to do before the crisis arrives. And it's not a uncertainty. It's only a matter of time until that crisis will arrive. Second, now we're not talking about crypto, okay? It's not a crypto hype. It's about infrastructure. It's about money. Today, if you are a successful company, profitable company, you don't think, I mean, you can control everything, but you cannot control the banks. Now, some have heard of, if you're not in the Bitcoin space or if you've been approached by clients, there are tokens, stable coins, exchanges. Those terms are different categories. Bitcoin is simply a treasury grade protocol. Okay? So it's not speculation, it's not gambling. Across the Middle East and Africa, you have 3 specific monetary regimes, not 2, not 4. The first is float and flail, and here think high inflation, really deteriorating currency, and this is where chaos is. I lived it in Lebanon, I lived it in Angola, and I've seen it in Egypt, I've seen it in Ghana, and Ethiopia a couple of years back. The second is oil and peg. Oil and peg are the currencies that are pegged to the oil. Think Saudi, think UAE, think stability. I don't know how stable it would be in a war situation, though. And last is the third prohibition paradox. And this is always the case. Whenever a country bans something, that thing goes boom and like accelerates in the underground. When it comes to Bitcoin, Angola banned mining, Egypt, Morocco banned Bitcoin, and it's only that it's growing in adoption in the underground. Bitcoin versus stablecoins, as much as we are Bitcoiners, we need to speak openly about stablecoins as well. And I'd like to set the differences. Stablecoin, in just a small sentence, is just another digital dollar, politically controlled, whatever the stablecoin is. Okay? Bitcoin is freedom money. It's yours only. As a business, it's yours to control 24/7 all year long. Now, when does Bitcoin become really enterprise level? You can just like buy Bitcoin, put it on a wallet, but this is not the right way of doing it as a business. As a business owner, as a board member, you need to think of continuity planning, inheritance planning, all the governance procedures. First case is a purchasing power reserve. Today, if you own a bond, if you own a property, you need liquidity. You can't sell a room from your floor if you have property on your balance sheet. In Bitcoin, you can liquidate as much as you want. $100, 1,000, 10K, 100K, more, as much as you want. Then settlement optionality. Now, what if, and I lived that in Angola, where the client was very profitable, making millions of dollars a year, a month sometimes, but they couldn't sustain their profitability because they couldn't pay their suppliers to get more products or raw material for manufacturing, just because the banks were not allowing them to. And that is across Cameroon, Congo, etc. Remember, and you can look it up on X or on Mempool, a couple of years back, there was a transfer of $2 billion of Bitcoin, and they paid only $6 in transfer fees. So whenever the banks have like expensive transfers or are not reachable, Bitcoin is a settlement option. The third is treasury policy. Non-Bitcoiners would think, if you're talking to a CFO or a board or a business owner, they would think, yeah, okay, but like, is Bitcoin trading? If I'm owning Bitcoin, is it like a trade? Basically, once you want to go to a client or like someone to convince with Bitcoin as a business owner, it needs to be like a proper internal organization. It needs to be documented properly. You need to think governance first. And by putting governance first, just like an enterprise, the whole language, the whole forecast of the policy, how much do we need to liquidate, how much do we need to freeze, document it, do tabletop exercises, and then they would know and behave, not like they won't be trading, they would be governed by their own policies. Fourth case, how does it actually look? And now we're going to stop with the theories, okay? I spend a lot of time also in Dubai, where it's becoming a corridor for stable coins and Bitcoin. There are a lot of employees, workers from Africa in Dubai. They are transferring their Bitcoin or stable coins without going through the banks. Now, there are a lot of businesses in Africa and in the world with Chinese suppliers. Chinese suppliers are giving discounts if you pay them in Bitcoin or stablecoins. And I'm gonna keep it quick. Here is the third point, is the most important point for me. I have a lot of friends and clients where I converted them into Bitcoin, not by pitching Bitcoin at all. There were, and they are, manufacturers. They produce normal goods. They have sites, they have security, they have electricity, they have internet already. I was like, okay, on your P&L, your highest cost after headcount, after payroll, it's energy costs. Do the assessment. 80% of the time, they have an excess stranded energy. Plug a miner and start escalating the number of miners on their site, and then you'll be converting that cost center into a profit center. What works, and to keep the time really short, is what we mentioned. I'm gonna shift to what fails and doesn't work, okay? So don't claim, like, don't introduce Bitcoin as like, let's buy Bitcoin, it's the solution, okay? Awareness, education, educating the shareholders, the board members, why Bitcoin is different, it's gonna take time. A lot of time, but this is the way, if you want it sustainable. And last is the test for your board after your work, or you can do this homework before going to assess situation, is the activity of holding Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin, insuring Bitcoin, is legal in your jurisdiction? Who has the authority to sign, sell Bitcoin or buy Bitcoin? How will you custody? How will you tax it? How will you insure it if you want to insure it? And can the board answer all these questions before? If you're sure or not sure if they can, that means they're not ready. Finally, yes, the money is breaking, but the response isn't the hype. It's understanding what we're dealing with, is how to build your wealth, your business, especially in a, let's say, unstable environment like the African environment, unfortunately. Thank you.